Imagine walking into a billion-dollar deal, only to be publicly humiliated in front of the world's most powerful people. That's exactly what happened to Monica Johnson, a brilliant black woman CEO, when a billionaire white family tried to put her in her place. But instead of bowing down, she shocked everyone and walked away from a $900 million deal. This is the story of dignity, power, and the moment she turned humiliation into triumph. Who let her in here? The words rang out like a slap. For a brief second, silence swallowed the entire conference hall. Every head turned toward the tall glass doors, where Monica Johnson stood, framed by the bright light spilling in from the corridor. She was the picture of confidence, a black business suit cut to perfection, her posture straight, her chin high. Her heels clicked on the marble floor as she walked in, carrying only a sleek leather briefcase. But confidence doesn't shield you from humiliation. The voice belonged to William Prescott, patriarch of the Prescott family empire, one of the wealthiest dynasties in the country. His gray hair was slicked back, his suit tailored to the point of arrogance. He lounged in a leather chair at the head of the long mahogany table, a glass of sparkling water in hand, looking at Monica as though she were an intruder instead of the guest of honor. This woman, he continued, his tone laced with disdain. She runs Johnson Tech? I thought we were dealing with someone more seasoned. More fitting. A murmur spread across the room like wildfire. Executives exchanged uncomfortable glances. Journalists froze mid-scribble, their pens hanging above their notepads. Camera flashes dimmed. The deal everyone had come to witness, a historic $900 million merger between Monica's groundbreaking tech company and the Prescott family's industrial empire, was suddenly tainted by the sharp edge of insult. Monica stood still for a moment, her hand tightening around her briefcase handle. Inside, her mind raced. She had been through this before. Growing up as a young black woman in corporate America, she had been underestimated, sidelined, and dismissed countless times. She thought she had built armor strong enough to deflect the sneers and whispers. But this was different. This wasn't a closed-door meeting or a subtle brush-off. This was public. This was humiliating. And it came at the worst possible moment. This was supposed to be her day. Months of negotiations, late nights, and endless back and forth had led to this. Monica had worked tirelessly to build Johnson Tech from the ground up, a company now valued at billions for its cutting-edge software solutions. The Prescotts had the old money, the reach, the resources to expand her innovation worldwide. Together, this deal could have reshaped entire industries. That was the plan. That was why dozens of executives, investors, and members of the press had gathered here in the Prescott Tower. But instead of respect, she was being belittled in front of them all. The air in the room shifted. Some people looked away, pretending to check their phones. Others stared openly, curiosity in their eyes, as if waiting to see whether she would break. Monica could feel the weight of every gaze pressing down on her shoulders. She swallowed slowly, forcing herself to stay calm. Years of discipline kept her expression composed, though her chest burned with anger. She had promised herself long ago never to let people like William Prescott see her rattled. So, she walked forward with steady steps, heels clicking against the marble floor until she reached the table. Her chair sat opposite William's. She paused briefly, meeting his cold, calculating stare with one of her own. For a fleeting second, something almost like respect flickered in his eyes, not admiration, but recognition of her refusal to bow. She sat down without a word, her movements sharp and precise, sliding her briefcase beside her chair. The room was still hushed, every ear straining for her response. But she gave them none. Instead, Monica folded her hands neatly on the table, her face unreadable, her breathing even. On the outside, she looked calm. On the inside, her mind was already working. She replayed William's words, each syllable like a blade. More seasoned. More fitting. What he really meant was clear, not you. Not someone like you. The sting of it burrowed deep, but Monica refused to let it settle as defeat. No, she turned it into fuel. If he wanted her to shrink, he'd be disappointed. If he wanted her to beg for their validation, he'd be crushed. Because what William Prescott didn't know was that Monica Johnson had built her empire not by fitting into rooms like this, but by forcing those rooms to recognize her value. And while no one else in that room could see it yet, Monica had already made up her mind. This deal, this partnership that the Prescotts thought she'd cling to no matter the cost, was about to take a turn they would never see coming. Behind her calm gaze, a storm was forming. Deep down, Monica was already making a decision that would shock everyone. The meeting pressed forward, though the sting of William Prescott's insults still lingered in the air. A tense silence stretched across the grand conference room before Charles Prescott, William's eldest son, cleared his throat and tried to redirect the attention. "Let's, move along to the presentation," he said, clicking a remote in his hand. The lights dimmed, and a massive screen lit up with glossy slides. Graphs, market shares, profit forecasts. The Prescotts had clearly spent a fortune preparing this pitch. Charles spoke with polished confidence. The Prescott Group has been the backbone of American industry for over 70 years. With this merger, we can increase market dominance by 30% in just 2 years. Global expansion is inevitable. Together, we'll reshape the future. His words echoed smoothly, but Monica heard something else in them: arrogance, entitlement, certainty that she would sign simply because the numbers looked impressive. She folded her hands and listened, her expression calm, though her mind was racing. The Prescotts assumed they held all the cards. They thought she was desperate for their wealth and influence. What they didn't realize was that the real leverage in this room didn't belong to them, it belonged to her. As Charles flipped through slide after slide, William leaned back in his chair, occasionally glancing at Monica with a faint smirk, as though daring her to challenge him. The rest of the Prescott team nodded along in agreement, their suits crisp, their eyes calculating. To them, Monica was supposed to be a formality, the junior partner who would happily take a seat at their table as long as the check had enough zeros. But Monica wasn't built that way. She waited patiently until Charles reached the end of his glossy presentation. The screen faded to black, and polite applause rippled weakly through the room. All eyes turned toward her. "Well, Miss Johnson," William said finally, his voice dripping with condescension, "what do you think of our vision?" Monica leaned forward slowly, resting her elbows on the table. She let the silence hang just long enough to make them uneasy. Then, with a small, controlled smile, she said, "Impressive numbers. Truly. But I couldn't help noticing something missing from your entire presentation." A flicker of confusion crossed Charles's face. "Missing? What do you mean?" "Your slides talked about profits, about market dominance, about empire building," Monica replied, her voice smooth yet cutting. "But I didn't see a single word about innovation. Not one mention of adapting to emerging technology. Not one plan for how you'll survive the next decade without clinging to companies like mine." The room went still. A few executives shifted in their seats. Monica's words struck at the very heart of their empire. Everyone in the industry knew the truth: the Prescott Group was old money, old systems, old methods. Without Johnson Tech's groundbreaking software and innovation, their future looked more like decline than dominance. Charles stiffened. We were focusing on the financial aspects of the merger." Monica tilted her head, her eyes sharp. "Exactly. You were focusing on money. That's the difference between us. You build on legacy wealth. I build on vision. Without vision, your billions mean nothing." A low murmur spread through the crowd. Journalists' pens scratched furiously across their notepads. Investors glanced at each other, some nodding in quiet agreement. Monica could see it in their eyes, a spark of admiration. She wasn't just holding her own. She was commanding the room. William's smirk faded slightly, replaced by a cold stare. "Miss Johnson, I suggest you tread carefully. We've been in this business long before you. And you'll be out of it," Monica shot back calmly, "if you don't evolve. And right now, the only path to evolution is through me." The silence that followed was deafening. Even the hum of the projector seemed louder. For the first time in the meeting, the Prescott family didn't look untouchable. They looked cornered. Monica sat back, her expression composed. She hadn't raised her voice. She hadn't needed to. Every word was deliberate, every sentence a reminder that she wasn't here to beg. She was here because they needed her more than she needed them. And deep down, the Prescotts knew it. The formal meeting ended with a round of forced applause, but the tension hung thick in the air. Monica had not only stood her ground, she had exposed the cracks in the Prescott empire for everyone to see. The press and investors whispered among themselves as aides hurried to usher key players into private rooms. Within minutes, Monica found herself walking down a dimly lit hallway behind a Prescott assistant. Her heels clicked sharply against the polished marble, her every step deliberate. She was led into a private lounge, a room far smaller than the grand conference hall, but no less intimidating. Dark wood panels lined the walls, the smell of expensive cigars clinging faintly to the air. Inside, waiting for her, were William Prescott and his two sons, Charles and Edward. A bar cart gleamed in the corner, bottles of aged whiskey and crystal glasses arranged like trophies. William stood there pouring himself a drink, the ice clinking as though to emphasize the silence. For a long moment, no one spoke. Finally, William turned, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. "You're clearly talented, Ms. Johnson. I'll give you that. Not many people have the nerve to challenge me in front of my own investors." His tone was flat, but underneath, Monica caught a glimmer of annoyance, the kind that came from being publicly undermined. Charles, the eldest, leaned casually against the leather couch. He wore a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. "But let's be realistic," he added smoothly. "Our name carries weight. Our reputation opens doors worldwide. You may have the tech, but we have the power. You'd be wise to remember that." Monica raised an eyebrow. Power without innovation fades quickly. Edward, the younger son, let out a short laugh. "You think a few clever lines are going to rattle us? Don't misunderstand. We admire your ambition. But you need us far more than we need you. You're still an outsider in this league." The word outsider landed heavy, unspoken layers laced within it. Outsider because she was new money. Outsider because she wasn't from their elite circles. Outsider because she was a black woman daring to sit at their table. William stepped closer, lowering his voice as if delivering some kind of lesson. "You've built something impressive, but you lack legacy. Legacy is what cements power. Without it, companies like yours get swallowed. That's why you should be grateful we're offering to fold you into the Prescott Group. With us, you'll be untouchable." "Grateful?" Monica repeated, her tone sharp but calm. "Yes," Charles said smoothly, his smirk returning. "This partnership could make you the richest black woman in corporate America. But don't expect us to treat you like an equal. That's not how this works." Monica's heart thudded in her chest. Their arrogance was staggering. They didn't see her as a partner. They didn't even see her as an equal negotiator. To them, she was a prize, something flashy to parade around to prove they were forward-thinking. But respect? No, they would never give her that. She stood slowly, her presence commanding the room even without raising her voice. Her gaze swept over all three men, steady and unflinching. "You've made one thing very clear," she said. "This deal was never about partnership. It was about control. About using my company, and me, as a pawn in your empire." None of them spoke. They simply stared back at her, waiting for her to fold. But Monica didn't fold. She tightened her grip on her briefcase and delivered her words with the sharpness of a blade. "Let me remind you of something. Johnson Tech doesn't need you to survive the future. But without Johnson Tech, you have no future." The words hung in the air like thunder. The arrogance in their eyes flickered, just for a moment. Before they could respond, Monica turned and headed for the door. Her heels echoed like drumbeats of defiance. She didn't look back, not once. Behind her, three of the most powerful men in the country stood stunned, realizing too late that the woman they thought they could belittle had just walked away with the upper hand. When Monica re-entered the grand conference hall, the atmosphere was electric with anticipation. Dozens of reporters leaned forward, cameras ready to capture the historic moment when the Prescott family and Johnson Tech would officially unite. Executives whispered nervously, sensing the tension but clinging to the belief that the deal was still intact. The Prescotts followed close behind her, their faces carefully composed, masks of control concealing the storm brewing underneath. William settled back at the head of the table, his jaw tight. Charles adjusted his tie, projecting confidence. Edward scrolled on his phone, pretending disinterest. A large contract folder lay on the table, pens waiting beside it. The spotlight shone on Monica. All she had to do was sign. But instead of taking the pen, Monica rose and walked to the podium at the front of the room. Murmurs rippled across the hall. Reporters scrambled to focus their cameras on her. She cleared her throat, her voice calm yet powerful. "I came here today expecting to finalize a merger that could have changed the industry," she began, her words carrying across the hall. "But what I've realized is this: history isn't made by money alone. It's made by respect, by values, by vision." People leaned in closer, sensing something extraordinary was about to unfold. "Unfortunately," she continued, her gaze briefly flicking toward the Prescotts, "those values were missing here today. Respect was missing." Gasps echoed. William stiffened in his chair, his sons glaring in disbelief. Reporters' pens flew across their notepads, every word immortalized in ink. Monica's tone sharpened, each syllable deliberate. "So, as of this moment, Johnson Tech is officially walking away from this $900 million deal." The room erupted. Some shouted in shock, others cheered. Flashes from cameras went off like fireworks. Investors exchanged frantic whispers. Walking away from nearly $1 billion was unheard of, insane to some, inspiring to others. The Prescotts sat frozen, their empire's untouchable image cracking under the weight of her words. Monica set her hands firmly on the podium. "Respect," she said clearly, "is worth more than any check you could ever write." With that, she stepped down and strode out of the room, cameras chasing her, the thunder of her footsteps drowning out the chaos she had left behind. The fallout was immediate. Within hours, Monica's bold announcement dominated every news outlet. Headlines blared across screens in newspapers: "Black CEO walks away from $900 million deal after public humiliation." Clips of her powerful speech flooded social media, racking up millions of views in a single day. Hashtags with her name trended worldwide, as people praised her courage to walk away from nearly $1 billion rather than compromise her dignity. In boardrooms and coffee shops, conversations shifted. Some skeptics called her reckless, claiming she had let pride cost her fortune. But far more saw her as a symbol of strength, a leader who had redefined what true power looked like in business. Support poured in, from everyday people, from young entrepreneurs, and even from other CEOs who admired her stance. Monica hadn't just rejected a deal, she had made a statement that money without respect meant nothing. The Prescott family, meanwhile, faced a storm of backlash. Investors grew uneasy, their confidence shaken. Articles surfaced questioning the family's outdated leadership style. Analysts pointed out what Monica had already exposed: without Johnson Tech's innovation, the Prescott's empire was crumbling beneath its glossy exterior. In just weeks, several partnerships they had been negotiating quietly fell apart. Their reputation, once untouchable, had been permanently stained. Monica, however, was thriving. Her inbox overflowed with partnership offers from companies eager to work with her, companies that respected her values and vision. And this time, she wasn't negotiating from a place of compromise. She set the terms, and others eagerly adapted. Johnson Tech expanded faster than ever, gaining global recognition as a symbol of progress and integrity. One evening, standing before her employees, Monica addressed them with a proud smile. "We don't need anyone's approval to know our worth," she said. "We don't need to bend to those who refuse to see our value. We are building something bigger than money. We are building legacy." The room erupted in applause, her team energized and inspired. For them, Monica's decision wasn't just about walking away from a deal. It was proof that dignity and respect were priceless. And as for the Prescotts? They had underestimated her. And in doing so, they had lost far more than $900 million. And that's how Monica Johnson proved that no amount of money is worth more than respect. The Prescotts thought they held all the power, but in the end, they lost everything by underestimating her. What do you think? Was Monica right to walk away from nearly $1 billion? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell icon for more powerful stories just like this one.